Welcome back. You've arrived at Module 3 and we're going to explore the question, how do we know what to look for when seeking quality research evidence? What we're aiming for here is to become truly critical consumers of evidence, which you've thought about already in Module 2 when we asked you to consider the validity of evidence-based claims. This isn't only helpful for yourselves, it's important to consider how you might curate research evidence and construct conversations with your colleagues so that they too can become more critical and questioning when presented with research. And as we've mentioned, not all research evidence is created equal. There is more robust evidence and there is less robust evidence. This pyramid, our hierarchy of evidence, shows how different types of evidence can be critically assessed, moving from personal experiences and the anecdotal at level 4, right at the base there, through to the case studies with defined measures and results at level 3, up to experimental studies testing for causation at level 2, and finally to those repeatable studies where findings can be repeated in multiple studies at level 1. It is important to note that even the best innovations begin with that limited evidence of impact, which are then supported or validated or possibly even discounted over time with an increasing degree of rigour and confidence. So just because it's sitting at that bottom level, those emerging practices, it doesn't mean that it might not one day be a best practice. Approaches that we could consider as supported by the most robust evidence may not be precise enough for teachers to implement in their classrooms, and this is where professional discretion comes into play. There are a number of shortcuts that might help you assess the quality of research evidence. These two loose categories start with the sort of least demanding of your time and then move to the most intensive in terms of your efforts to determine the quality. So trusted partners and curators are number one. And you might already have, or you may develop a number of go-to places or organisations who present high quality research evidence for you to explore, including Evidence for Learning, but also the EEF, Aero, Cochrane, What Works, and many, many others. We'll explore a few of those in the next module too. It could also be a trusted colleague who is well versed in research. I'd just be a little bit careful there around where they're pulling their research from and if they can direct you back to the original sources. These types of partners should be transparent about what they include and don't include, and any research interests or financial interests that they have, particularly if they're associated or potential for financial gain. In theory, these curators have done the hard work for you, which I'll now describe as those key indicators of academia. The key indicators are signposts that will help you understand or assess the quality of rigour of research evidence. These could include aspects such as the methodology, the sample size, the independence of those conducting the research. That's really where you're checking for bias. It could be if it's peer-reviewed or not, or whether the research was pre-registered. If you're exploring systematic reviews or meta-analysis, you should see or expect to see a reference to PRISMA, which relates to the transparent reporting, and that really is considered a minimum set of items for reporting in meta-analysis and systematic reviews. If you are using a search platform or database, you can filter to ensure your results are sourced from academic journals and are peer-reviewed. Sometimes in those databases you'll find articles from magazines and other pieces that are less rigorous, and just for the sake of your time it's good to exclude those early on. So there are a few key questions to ask as you're going to try and determine the quality of evidence. The first is this research evidence recent and relevant? So this is looking at when it was published, where it was published, who were the participants, and that might be as simple as looking, was this conducted with secondary or primary students? A lot of research evidence around education is actually conducted with university students, and that's a good one to pick out. Another is around, is this research evidence able to be verified? So is it well referenced? For example, when you go to E4L's website, the Australasian Research Summaries, There's a list of search terms and search platforms with inclusion-exclusion criteria, which would mean if you were to do the same thing again, you would get the same results from the same outputs. There's a really good one here around, is the author or authors biased or likely to be biased? Occasionally researchers publish studies which relate to programs and practices which they are likely to benefit from them doing well. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a bias there, but it's important to consider their position and relationship with that program or practice, and also search out independent studies which are more likely to be free of that bias. Another good one to ask is what is the original source? So a lot of research these days is shared and mobilized through social media and other easy to digest platforms. Pinterest, for example, they're all exceptionally popular with educators globally. And we see a lot of evidence-based language in this space without much to back it up. If it is easy to click through and find some sort of independent study, which you could have also found through a database search, then it's a good indicator that there's some rigor around that claim. But if you have to look really hard, if you feel like you're spending a lot of time searching for something, or if you get directed back to a website which relates to the product or program, there's a good, that becomes a good time to question potential bias and the ability to verify those results. So those things might raise concerns or flags for you. So at the end of this module, you've got one short task to complete. To begin, we want you to identify the sources that you're currently referring to when you're seeking evidence. And we're going to apply a set of questions to them to look at the confidence of and the quality of that evidence, such as where do these sources sit within the evidence hierarchy, what are the indicators that tell you that these are high quality, rigorous, how do we know that we can trust them? And we've developed an audit sheet for you to download, which is attached to this module, to help you through that task as well. So all the best, and we will see you over in Module 4 when you are ready.